The morning sun on Aries 4 was soft and golden, the kind of light that made everything look like it belonged in a painting. Yuna stood at the front of her open-air classroom, watching 23 small faces look up at her with the kind of trust that only children could give. They sat on colorful mats spread across the grass, their little hands busy with crayons and paper. Today's lesson was simple: draw an alien you would like to be friends with. A boy named Jiho held up his drawing proudly. It showed a tall, green creature with 6 arms holding hands with a tiny human stick figure. He has 6 arms so he can hug more people, Jihub said. The other children laughed. Yuna smiled and told him it was beautiful. She meant it. These children have been born on this colony, far from Earth, far from war, far from anything that could hurt them. That was the whole point of Aris 4. It was a farming world, a world where families came to grow food and raise children under open skies. There were about 4,000 people living on the colony. More than 600 of them were children. There was no military base, no weapons depot, no warships in orbit. The Galactic Accord had classified Ares 4 as a protected civilian settlement. Every species in the galaxy had signed the agreement. No one was supposed to touch this place. Yuna was helping a girl named Sman fix her drawing when the sky changed. It happened fast. One moment the sun was warm and the air smelled like fresh soil. The next moment, there was a sound like thunder that did not stop. Yuna looked up and saw dark shapes cutting through the clouds. Ships, dozens of them. They were not human ships. The hulls were black and angular, covered in markings she recognized from her galactic studies. Training Drari warships. She did not understand. The Denari had no reason to be here. There was nothing here worth taking, but the ships kept coming, and then the first explosion hit the grain storage building 200 m away, and the ground shook so hard that several children fell off their mats. The screaming started. Yuna moved on instinct. She grabbed the nearest children and pulled them toward the school building. Inside, everyone inside. Now, she shouted. The older kids helped the younger ones. Sin was crying. Jiho was clutching his drawing against his chest like it could protect him. Yuna counted heads as they ran. 21, 22. She was missing one. She turned around and saw a small boy named Minj standing frozen in the field, staring at the sky. With wide eyes, she ran back, scooped him up, and carried him inside just as another explosion turned the field into fire. On the ground, Drari soldiers poured out of landing craft. They moved through the colony with brutal efficiency. Their commander was a sub-officer named Telek. His orders were clear: destroy the infrastructure, burn the fields, make the humans suffer. This was punishment. Earth's diplomats had blocked a Drenari mining claim in the Galactic Council 3 months ago, and Warlord Voreth had decided that a soft human colony would be the perfect target to send a message. Telek did not care that the settlement was full of civilians. He did not care that there were children. To the Danari, humans were a weak species, too emotional, too soft. Telek believed that breaking their spirit would be easy. All he had to do was show them pain. The soldiers moved through the streets, firing at buildings, smashing equipment, rounding up anyone they found. They did not ask questions. They did not give warnings. A medical clinic was hit. Community hall collapsed. The screams of people trapped under rubble mixed with the sound of Denari boots on broken Ground. Inside the school building, Yuna pressed the children against the far wall and covered them with her body. The building shook, dust fell from the ceiling, a crack split the wall above them. She could hear gunfire outside. Close, too close, the children were sobbing, their small bodies shaking against hers. She whispered to them, "I am here, I am not leaving, close your eyes, I am right here." A blast hit the east wall of the school. The roof caved in on one side. Yuna felt burning pain across her back and arms as hot debris fell on her. She did not move. She kept herself over the children. She could smell smoke and blood and fear. Across the colony, Ji-yoon was running. She was a military medic stationed at a small outpost 3 km from the main settlement, meant to handle farming injuries and minor emergencies. She had heard the explosions and had grabbed her emergency kit and every recording device she had. When she reached the colony, what she saw made her stop breathing for a moment. Bodies in the streets, buildings on fire, and children, injured children everywhere. Girl with a broken arm sitting alone. The dirt, too shocked to cry. A boy with burns across his face, calling for his mother. 2 toddlers huddled under an overturned cart, holding each other. Jun started recording. Her hands were shaking, but she kept the camera steady. She documented everything, every wound, every destroyed building, every denari insignia on the wreckage. She treated the injured as fast as she could, moving from child to child, bandaging, stabilizing, whispering comfort. She did not feel. She found the school building half collapsed. Inside she found Yuna, still covering the children, her back burned and bleeding. Yuna looked up at her with eyes full of pain and said only one thing, "Are they all alive?" Jun checked. They were. Every one of Yuna's students had survived. Yuna had taken everything meant for them. Jun transmitted her recordings to Earth. Using an emergency burst signal, she sent everything, the footage, the medical data, the names and ages of every child she treated. She sent it just before the Drari jammed all communications from the planet. As night fell on Ares 4, the fire still burned. Telk walked through the ruined colony. Satisfied with his work, he stepped over broken toys and small shoes without looking down. He passed the collapsed school and did not notice the woman inside, still holding the children, still breathing, still alive. He did not know what he had just started. He did not understand what humans became when you touched their children. He would learn, but by then it would be far too late for the denari to do anything but watch their world fall apart. Yuna held the children through the night, whispering their names like a prayer, and somewhere far away, across the cold black distance of space, the message was already arriving on Earth. The war room of the United Earth Naval Command was deep underground, built into the rock beneath a mountain range that had stood for millions of years. It was a place designed for the worst days in human history. The day the footage from Ares 4 arrived was one of those days. Fleet Admiral TJO stood at the center of the room, surrounded by generals, admirals, intelligence officers, and political advisors. Every screen in the room showed the same thing: Jiun's recordings. The footage played without sound at first, and that somehow made it worse. Buildings burning in silence. Child sitting alone in rubble, holding a broken toy, her mouth open in a scream. No one in the room could hear. Drari soldiers walking through streets filled with smoke stepping over small bodies, like they were stepping over stones. Then someone turned the sound on. The room heard the crying, the desperate voice of Giant calling for help as he tried to bandage a boy whose face was half burned, the sound of Una whispering to her students inside the collapsing school, telling them to keep their eyes closed, telling them she loved them, telling them it would be okay, even though her voice was breaking. When the footage ended, no one spoke. The silence lasted a long time. TJO had not moved during the entire recording. His face had shown nothing. His hands were still at his sides, but those who knew him well could see something in his eyes that they had never seen before. It was not anger. Anger was too small a word for it. It was something older, something that lived in the bones of every human being who had ever held a child. He spoke only 3 words. Recall every fleet. No one questioned the order. Within the hour, every human warship in the galaxy received the same command: return to Earth immediately. Exercises were canceled. Trade escorts were abandoned. Diplomatic missions were cut short. Ships that had been scattered across 100 star systems began turning toward home. The largest military mobilization in human history had begun, and most of the galaxy did not even notice. On the Galactic Council Station, a massive structure floating in neutral space between the major powers, the human ambassador Sun Wu received the report from Earth at the same time. He read it. In his private quarters alone, he read the names of the dead children first, then the names of the injured, then the medical reports. Then he looked at the drawings the children had made in Ununis class that morning, recovered from the wreckage. Pictures of aliens with big smiles, pictures of humans and aliens holding hands, pictures of stars and flowers in a universe that was kind. Sun Wu sat with those drawings for a long time. Then he stood, straightened his suit, and requested an emergency session of the full Galactic Council. The council chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from over 300 species. When Sun Wu took the floor, the room was noisy with conversation and political chatter. He did not wait for silence. He simply played the footage on every screen in the chamber. The noise stopped. 300 species watched human children die. They watched human children burn. They watched a teacher sacrifice her body to shield her students. They watched a medic cry while treating a toddler's wounds. When the footage ended, Sun Wu stood at the podium and looked out at the silent room. The Denari ambassador was not present. He had been recalled to the Dominion 3 days earlier. Navin, the neutral mediator of the council, was the first to speak. She was shaken. Her voice, normally steady and diplomatic, wavered. She expressed deep sympathy and condemned the attack, but she urged restraint. The Denari Dominion was a major military power. Retaliation could destabilize the entire galactic order. She offered reparations, formal censure, economic sanctions. She asked Earth to work within the system. Sun Wu listened politely. He waited until she was finished. Then he spoke. He did not raise his voice. He did not make threats. He spoke quietly, the way Father speaks when he has passed anger and has entered something much more dangerous. He told the council about Earth's history. He told them about the ancient civilization that had fallen because they made the mistake of harming children. He told them about wars that lasted generations because someone crossed that one line. He told them that in all of human history, across every culture, every nation, every era, there was one rule that never changed. You do not touch the children. He paused, and then he said something that every ambassador in that room would remember for the rest of their lives. We came to this galaxy with open hands. We offered trade, friendship, knowledge, and cooperation. We asked for nothing except to be left in peace. We signed your treaties, we respected your borders, we played by your rules, and in return, you let a species burn our children alive on a world that your own laws said was protected. He looked at knew directly. You are asking me to accept reparations. You are asking me to accept money for the lives of children. I want you to understand something. There is no amount of money in this galaxy that equals the life of one human child. There is no political framework that can absorb what has been done. There is no negotiation. He placed a single data chip on the podium. Earth formally withdraws from the Galactic Accords peace framework. Effective immediately, the chamber erupted. Ambassador shouted. No called for order, but Sun Wu was already walking out. Meanwhile, deep inside the flagship Iron Cradle, Pana had not slept. In 72 hours, she sat in front of a wall of holographic displays, each one showing a different piece of the Drari Dominion, fleet positions, colony locations, supply lines, communication networks, defense grids, patrol routes. She mapped everything, every weakness, every blind spot, every vulnerability. She built the most complete intelligence picture of an alien civilization that any human had ever assembled, and she did it in 3 days. When TJO asked her if she was ready, she sent him a single file. It contained the complete operational plan for the destruction of the Drari Dominion's military capacity. Every target, every timeline, every contingency. She had named the file after the first child killed on Ares 4. Far away in the Drari Dominion, Vorath received reports that the humans had withdrawn from the peace framework. He laughed. He actually laughed. He told his generals that the humans were a species of soft, emotional creatures who would cry for a few weeks and then come begging for a new treaty. He called them grieving animals and ordered a celebration feast. He did not increase his border patrols. He did not mobilize additional forces. He did not believe, not for one moment, that the humans would actually fight. This was the worst mistake any being in the galaxy had ever made. TJO stood on the bridge of the Iron Cradle as the last of Earth's fleets arrived in formation around the home world. Carriers, dreadnoughts, cruisers, destroyers, and ships that had no official classification because they had been built in secret for exactly this kind of day. He opened a channel to every ship in the fleet. His voice was calm and clear. This is Fleet Admiral TJO. Today we begin Operation Lalabi. Every ship in this fleet has been renamed. You will find your new designation in your command files. Each vessel now carries the name of a child. From Ares 4, you will fight under their names. You will carry their names into the dark, and when this is over, the galaxy will remember every single one of them. He closed the channel and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Drari were sleeping peacefully, unaware that the most dangerous species in the galaxy had just decided with absolute and total certainty that the Dranari Dominion would cease to exist. TJO whispered into the silence of the bridge. They will hear the children's names before the end. For over century, humanity had presented itself to the galaxy as a species of traders, diplomats and farmers. They smiled at council meetings. They built hospitals. On alien worlds, they shared agricultural technology with developing species for free. They were polite. They were generous. They were kind, and every single species in the galaxy had made the same mistake. They confused kindness for weakness. What no one knew, what no intelligence service had ever discovered, was that behind the smiling diplomats and open trade routes, Earth had been quietly building the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen, not because humans wanted war, but because buried deep inside the bones and blood of every human being was an instinct older than language, older than civilization, older than thought. Thought itself, protect the young at any cost. Always, the fleets moved out from Earth in perfect formation, 312 warships, each one now carrying the name of a child from Ares 4, the carrier Jiho, the destroyer Sman, the cruiser Minj, every name painted on every hull in white letters that glowed against the dark metal. The crews did not need speeches or motivation. Every sailor, every marine, every pilot had seen the footage. They knew whose names they carried. That was enough. TJO commanded from the bridge of the Iron Cradle, the flagship of the fleet. The Iron Cradle was a dreadnought so large that when Denari long-range sensors first detected it, they classified it as a space station. It was not a space station. It was a warship built around a simple idea that humanity's children would always have something standing between them and the dark. The first phase of Operation Lalabi was silent. Hana's intelligence work had identified every weakness in the Drari early warning network. Human stealth ships, small and fast and nearly invisible, slipped through Drari space like ghosts. In a single coordinated strike, they disabled sensor stations across 3 sectors simultaneously. The Denari border went blind. Their commanders did not realize anything was wrong for almost 6 hours. By then it was already too late. The main fleet hit the Denari outer colonies first. These were military outposts and supply bases, the backbone of the Dominion's war machine. TJO had been clear in his orders: military targets only. Every strike was precise. Every target was confirmed. Hana had mapped each installation down to the individual buildings, and the fleet followed her plans exactly. The first outpost fell in 40 minutes, the second in 20, the third surrendered before a single shot was fired because the garrison commander had already received word of what happened to the first 2. But it was what happened after the fighting that shocked the galaxy. Doi led the 7th Reaper Division, the ground forces assigned to secure captured Drari installations. His soldiers were trained for close combat, urban warfare, and hostile environments. They were some of the most dangerous fighters humanity had ever produced, and when they entered the Denari outposts, they did something no one expected. They protected the civilians at every installation. Before the first bomb fell, human forces broadcast warnings on all Drari communication channels. They told civilians to move to designated safe areas. They gave them time. Then after the military targets were destroyed, the 7th Reaper Division moved in and set up medical stations, water distribution points and temporary shelters for displaced Denari families. Doi personally oversaw the evacuation of a Drenari colony where 300 civilians, including over 50 children, were living next to a military fuel depot. His soldiers carried Denari children to safety on their shoulders. They gave them food from their own rations. Photograph of a human marine holding a sleeping Drari infant while standing in the ruins of a military base spread across the galactic news networks within hours. A captured Denari officer, mid-ranking commander named Rethus, was brought before Dohyun for questioning. Rethus was confused. He had been told that humans were savage, emotional creatures who would slaughter everything in their path. Instead, he had watched human soldiers treat his wounded and feed his people's children. Why? Rethus asked. Why do you spare our civilians? We did not spare yours. Don looked at him for a long moment. Because we are not you, he said. We know what children are worth, every child, not just ours. Rethus had no answer for that. The news of humanity's campaign spread through the galaxy like fire. Every species watched in a mixture of terror and awe. The humans were destroying the Denari military with an efficiency that defied all predictions. Analysts had estimated that a war between Earth and the Denari Dominion would last years and cost millions of lives on both sides. Instead, the humans were dismantling the Dominion's military capability in weeks, and they were doing it while protecting enemy civilians. This was something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that could be utterly merciless to soldiers and completely gentle to children at the same time, a species that could destroy your army and then bandage your daughter's scraped knee. It was beautiful and terrifying, and it made every other civilization in the galaxy quietly update their military files on humanity. Voreth was no longer laughing. Reports were flooding into his command center, colony after colony going silent, fleet after fleet being destroyed or surrendering, supply lines cut, communication networks disrupted. The humans were not just attacking. They were systematically erasing the Dari Dominion's ability to fight, and they were doing it with a level of coordination and technological superiority that Voreth had never imagined possible. He sent desperate messages to the Galactic Council, demanding intervention. He accused the humans of aggression, of violating galactic law, of warmongering. Nu received his messages and forwarded them to Sun Wu with a personal request for negotiation. Sun Wu's response was a single data file. Inside were the medical records of every child injured on Ares 5, their names, their ages, their injuries described in clinical detail, burns covering 60% of a 6-year-old's body, a shattered spine, in an 8-year-old who would never walk again, psychological trauma assessments for children who could not stop screaming when they heard loud sounds. Attached to each medical record was a drawing, the drawings the children had made in Ununis class the morning of the attack. Aliens with big smiles, humans, and aliens holding hands, stars and flowers, and a universe that was kind. At the bottom of the file, Sun Wu had added one line: show these to Voreth. Then ask him if he would like to negotiate with their parents. Nuinded not forward the message. The UEN fleet continued its advance, system by system. The Denari Dominion's outer territories fell, human ships moved deeper into Drari. Space past the trade routes, past the colony worlds, past the resource stations, heading straight for the heart of the Dominion. Hana worked around the clock, updating intelligence, adjusting plans, finding new weaknesses in real time. She intercepted Drari communications that showed their high command was falling apart. Generals were arguing with each other. Some wanted to surrender, some wanted to fight to the death. Vorath was issuing contradictory orders, one moment demanding all-out resistance, and the next moment trying to arrange secret negotiations through back channels. None of it mattered. The human fleet did not slow down. It did not stop. It did not negotiate. 3 weeks after Operation Lalabi began, the UEN fleet arrived at the Denari Inner Defense Ring, the final line of military protection before the Denari home world. It was supposed to be impenetrable. 200 warships, orbital fortresses, minefields, and defense platforms arranged in a sphere around the home system. The iron cradle dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of the defense ring, and behind it came the rest of the fleet, 312 warships each, carrying a child's name, each crewed by people who had not forgotten why they were here. TJO looked at the Dranari defense ring on his tactical display. It was the largest military formation the Dranari had ever assembled. It was outnumbered 3-1. He opened a communication channel to the Dranari fleet. This is Fleet Admiral Teju of the United Earth Navy. You have 1 hour to surrender your vessels and stand down. After that, we are coming through. I strongly suggest you do not make us come through. The channel went silent. The clock started, and across the galaxy, every species held its breath. The hour passed. Some Drari ships surrendered. Most did not. Vorath had ordered his fleet to hold the line at all costs, and enough of his captains still believed in him to obey. The Denari defense ring tightened its formation, activated every weapon system, and prepared for the largest space battle in galactic history. It was not a battle, it was a lesson. TJO gave a single command. The UN fleet moved forward in a formation that military historians would study for centuries. It was called the Cradle formation, designed by Hana specifically for this engagement. The larger ships formed a protective shell while fast attack vessels poured through gaps in the enemy line, targeting weapon systems and engines with surgical precision. Humans did not aim to destroy every ship, they aimed to disable them. A ship without engines and weapons was no longer a threat. A ship full of living sailors who could be rescued later was not a war crime. The Denari fought hard. They were not cowards, and their ships were well built, but they were fighting an enemy that had spent a century preparing for exactly this kind of war. Without anyone knowing, human targeting systems were 3 generations ahead of anything the Denari had ever encountered. Human ships could chain direction faster, absorb more damage, and coordinate more precisely than the Drari thought possible. Within 4 hours, the defense ring was broken. 90 Denari warships were disabled and drifting. 60 had surrendered. The rest were debris. The orbital fortresses were dark and silent, their power systems shut down by precision strikes that left the structures intact but harmless. The minefields had been cleared by automated sweeper drones that the Denari did not even know existed. The path to the Dranari home world was open. TJO did not Rush, he ordered the fleet to hold position while rescue operations began. For the disabled Drari ships, human medical ships moved among the wreckage, pulling Drari sailors from damaged vessels, treating their wounds, giving them water and food. Some of the rescue Denari wept, not because they were afraid, but because they could not understand why the species they had been told was savage and emotional was saving their lives. Then the fleet moved inward. The Dranari home world was a large planet with green continents and blue oceans, not so different from Earth. Billions of Dranari lived there, families, children, workers, artists, teachers, people who had nothing to do with the attack on Ares 4 and had probably never even heard of the colony. TJO knew this. Every commander in the fleet knew this. The fleet took orbit around the home world but did not fire a single shot at the planet. Instead, TJO broadcast a message on every frequency in every Denari language to every communication device on the surface. He told the civilian population that they were not targets. He told them that human forces would be landing to arrest members of the military high command. He told them to stay calm, stay indoors, and that no harm would come to them or their families. Then Dohyun and the 7th Reaper Division dropped from orbit. The ground operation was fast and precise. Dohyun had studied the layout of the Denari capital city for weeks using intelligence that Hana had gathered from intercepted communications, stolen data, files, and satellite imagery. His teams knew exactly where every member of the high command was hiding. They moved through the city like shadows, bypassing civilian areas, avoiding collateral damage, and reaching their targets before the Denari even knew they had landed. Telek was found in a bunker beneath the military headquarters. He had barricaded himself inside with a squad of personal guards. The guards surrendered after a brief standoff. Telk did not. He fired at the human soldiers until his weapon was empty, and then he tried to fight with his hands. It took 4 Marines to restrain him. He was not injured. The orders were clear. He was to be taken alive. They brought him to a makeshift tribunal set up in the ruined council chamber of the Drari High Command. The room was lit by portable lights, and in the center was a single chair. They sat Telk in it and played the footage from Ares 4 on a large screen in front of him. The same footage the Galactic Council had seen, the same footage that had played in the UEN war room. Telok watched in silence. When it was over, Dohu stood in front of him and read the names of every child who had been killed in the attack. He read slowly, clearly, giving each name the weight it deserved. When he finished, he looked at Telok and said, "You will remember those names. You will say them every day for the rest of your life, and if you forget even one, I will come back and remind you." Voroth was harder to find. While his soldiers fought and died at the defense ring, the warlord had slipped out of the capital in a personal cruiser, heading for the far side of the planet, where a hidden escape route would take him out of the system. He had planned this escape months ago, long before the humans arrived. He had always intended to sacrifice his people to save himself. Hana had predicted this. She had found the escape route in the intercepted communications and had positioned a single UEN interceptor along its path. The pilot was a woman named Unjai, lieutenant whose 9-year-old daughter had been among the injured on Ares 4. Her Daughter had lost the use of her right hand she would never draw again. Unjai did not destroy Voroth's cruiser. She disabled its engine with 2 precise shots, leaving it drifting and powerless. Then she opened a communication channel and said, Voroth, my name is Lieutenant Unjai. My daughter's name is Han. She is 9 years old. She used to draw pictures of aliens. She wanted to be friends with. She cannot hold a crayon anymore because of what your soldiers did. I want you to know her name before they come to take you away. Voroth was pulled from his cruiser in restraints. He said nothing. For the first time in his life, the warlord of the Dranari Dominion had nothing to say. On the Galactic Council station, Sun Wu stood before the full assembly once again. The room was absolutely silent. Every ambassador, every diplomat, every aide and translator and observer sat without moving as the human ambassador laid out Earth's terms. He did not present them as a negotiation. He presented them as facts. The Dranari Dominion was dissolved permanently. The political entity that had terrorized its neighbors for centuries would never exist again. All Dranari military assets, every ship, every weapon, every base would be surrendered and destroyed. Dranari colonies would be allowed to govern themselves under galactic observation, free to build their own futures, but they would never again be united under a single military command. Voroth and Telek would stand trial for crimes against children, and then Sun Wu introduced the most important part, a new galactic law. He called it the AIS Accord. It was simple. The deliberate harming of any species, children, by any government, military, or organized force would be considered the highest crime in the galaxy. The punishment would be the complete dismantlement of the offending civilization's government and military apparatus, not sanctions, not fines, not diplomatic consequences. The same thing that had just happened to the Dranari. No. Seconded the motion. She had watched the entire war unfold and had understood something that many in the room were only now beginning to grasp. The humans were not making a threat. They were making a promise, and they had just proven beyond any possible doubt that they could keep it. The vote was unanimous. 300 species voted in favor of the Ares Accord. Not one voted against it. Not one abstained. The trial of Voroth and Telek was held 3 days later in the council chamber. It was broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The evidence was presented calmly and thoroughly. Jun's footage, medical records, testimony from survivors. Yuna appeared via communication link, her scars still visible, her voice steady, and described what happened in her classroom that morning. At the end of the trial, before sentencing, the tribunal required Voroth to read the names of every child who was killed. He was handed a list. His hands shook as he held it. He read each name aloud slowly, stumbling over the human pronunciations. When he finished, there were tears on his face. The galaxy watched a warlord weep over the names of children he had ordered killed. And something shifted in the way every species understood humanity. The humans were not savage. They were not cruel. They were something much more frightening. They were parents, and they would burn the galaxy to the ground before they let anyone harm their children again. 2 years passed. The galaxy settled into a new kind of peace, one that was quieter and more careful than the peace that came before. Species that had once tested boundaries and pushed against treaties now thought twice, not because they feared human weapons, though they did, but because they understood finally what lived behind the kindness that humans showed. The universe, they understood what would wake up if that kindness was betrayed. On Ares 4, the colony had been rebuilt. Not just repaired, not just patched together, but transformed into something that had not existed before. Engineers and architects from Earth had volunteered by the thousands to help. They came with materials, tools, and plans, but they also came with something else. They came with the need to make it right. The fields were green again, wider and richer than before. New homes stood where the old ones had burned. School had been built where Yuna's classroom once stood, twice as large, with windows that let in the golden morning light from every direction. At the center of the colony was a new plaza. It was called the Children's Garden. It was a wide open space filled with flowers and trees from a dozen different worlds. Walking paths wound through it, and benches sat in the shade of branches that had been carried across star systems because someone on a distant planet had heard what happened and wanted to send something alive and growing. At the heart of the Children's Garden stood a monument. It was made of white stone from Earth, polished smooth and warm to the touch. On its surface, carved in letters that would last longer than the stars, were the names of every child who had been harmed on Ares 4. Their ages were listed beside their names. Below the names was a single sentence. They dreamed of a kind universe. We will build it for them. Yuna came to the monument every morning. Before class, she stood in front of it and read the name silently, the way she used to take attendance. And then she walked to her new classroom and opened the door. Her students were waiting for her, 28 of them now, more than before. They sat on colorful mats just like the old days, but the faces were different. Some were human children born on the colony or brought by families who had moved to Ares 4 after the rebuilding. But some were not human. 4 young Denari children sat among the others. Orphans displaced by the fall of the Dominion, brought to the colony by resettlement program that Yuna herself had asked for. The first day the Denari children arrived, some of the human parents had been angry. How could Denari children be welcome to the place where Denari soldiers had killed their own? But Yuna had spoken at a community meeting, still carrying the scars on her back in arms, and had said something that silenced every argument. These children did not attack us. They are children the same as ours. If we teach them to be hated, we become what the Denari were. If we teach them to be loved, we become what we always said we were. No one argued after that. Now the Drari children sat with the human children, sharing crayons, learning the same lessons, laughing at the same jokes. A Drari girl named something unpronounceable in her own language had asked Yuna to give her a human name. Yuna called her Bora, which meant purple, because the girl loved the color of the flowers in the children's garden. Bora sat next to Jiho, the same boy who had survived the attack, now 2 years older and still drawing aliens with 6 arms. They were best friends. Yuna still flinched at loud sounds, but she smiled more than she used to, and the smile was real. Gon ran the colony's medical center now. It was the finest medical facility in the sector, equipped with technology that most planets could not afford. Earth had made sure of that. Jian had trained a staff of 30 including 5 Drari medics who had applied to work alongside humans. Her original footage from the attack was archived in every galactic library, cataloged and preserved so that no species could ever claim it did not happen. She did not watch it anymore. She did not need to. She remembered every second Hana had left military intelligence. She now led a galactic information-sharing network, a system she had designed to make sure that no civilian colony on any world, human or otherwise, would ever be caught unaware. Again, sensor networks, early warning systems, and rapid response communication lines connected hundreds of settlements across the galaxy. She worked from a quiet office on Earth and rarely spoke to the press, but every intelligence agency in the galaxy knew her name and treated her with a respect that bordered on fear. Du-Hyun had not left Ares 4. He commanded the permanent defense garrison that Earth had stationed on the colony, a full brigade of the 7th Reaper Division, the most decorated combat unit in human history, now stood guard over a farming world. Their weapons were always ready. Their training never stopped, but most of their time was spent doing something else entirely. They coached the colony's children in sports. They helped build playgrounds. They organized games and competitions and field trips. The 7th Reaper Division had adopted an unofficial motto that had spread across the galaxy: the playground watch. Do-Hyun had the words stitched onto his unit patch, and he wore it with more pride than any medal he had ever received. He lived quietly on Earth in a small house near the ocean and spent his days reading and walking along the shore. He did not give interviews. He did not write memoirs. He did not attend ceremonies or accept awards. Once a year, on the anniversary of the attack, he traveled to Ares 4 alone. He stood before the monument in the children's garden and read every name. He always came early in the morning, before anyone else was there, and he always whispered the same thing before he left: we kept our promise. On the 2nd anniversary of the Ares Accord, Sun Wu stood before the Galactic Council. One final time, he was stepping down from his position as Earth's ambassador, and this was his farewell address. Chamber was full. Every seat was taken. Species that had not attended council sessions in decades had sent representatives to hear him speak. He did not talk about war. He did not talk about power or military strength or deterrence. He talked about Yuna's classroom. He told the council about the morning of the attack, about the lesson Yuna had given her students, about the drawings they had made. He described each one in detail from memory because he had studied them so many times that they were burned into his mind. The alien with 6 arms who could give bigger hugs, the spaceship made of flowers, the picture of a human and an alien walking together under a bright sun. Then he held up one drawing. It had been recovered from the wreckage of the school, crumpled and stained with dust and a little bit of blood. It showed a small human figure holding hands with a tall alien figure, both of them smiling, standing under a yellow sun with a blue sky behind them. A child named Hyun had drawn it, Unjai's daughter, the girl who could no longer hold a crayon. Sun Wu held the drawing up so the entire chamber could see it, and he said, "This is what we fight for, not territory, not resources, not pride, not power. This, a child's belief that the universe is kind, a child's hope that the stranger in the stars wants to be her friend. This is the most precious thing that humanity has ever produced, more valuable than any technology, any weapon, any empire, and I am telling you now, as I told you 2 years ago, that if anyone in this galaxy ever tries to destroy this, there is no force in existence that will save them from us. The chamber was silent for a long time. After he finished, years later, a new alien species made first contact with the galactic community. They were young and curious and eager to learn about the civilizations they were joining, new. Now the senior mediator of the council was assigned to brief them on galactic laws and customs. The alien ambassador listened carefully to everything, nodding along until Navi mentioned the Ares Accord. The ambassador asked what it was. Nu paused. She thought about how to explain it. She thought about the footage she had watched, the trial she had witnessed, the war she had seen unfold from her seat in the council chamber. She thought about the drawing of two figures holding hands under a sun. Then she said, it means you may challenge humanity in trade, you may argue with them in politics, you may, even if you are very foolish, face them in war. But if you harm their children, if you touch even one of them, there will not be enough left of your civilization to remember it ever existed. The alien ambassador was quiet for a long time. Then it asked very carefully, has anyone ever tested this law? 9 looked at the ambassador. Once, she said. Only once. Far away on a green and golden world at the edge of known space, a little girl walked through a garden full of flowers from a dozen different planets. She carried a small watering can and moved carefully between the rows, giving each flower just the right amount. When she reached the white stone monument at the center of the garden, she stopped and looked up at the names carved into its surface. She could not read all of them yet. She was still learning, but she knew they were important. She set down her watering can and knelt in the soft dirt beside the monument. She dug a small hole with her hands and placed a seed inside. She covered it gently and patted the earth flat. Then she stood up, brushed the dirt off her knees, and looked up at the sky. The stars were just beginning to appear in the evening light, small and bright and endless. She smiled, and somewhere in the vast and ancient galaxy, in council chambers and on warships and in the quiet rooms where decisions were made, every species remembered the lesson that humanity had taught them, not with anger, not with threats, but with a simple, unbreakable truth that had been written in the stars since the first human mother held her child and looked up at the night sky and swore on everything she was that nothing would ever hurt them, nothing ever.